So what was it about the book that made you just say, I have to make this film?
Wow, I don't know. There's so many elements from is it the talking dog? Is it the monster made out of freezer meats? Is it the drug that chooses you?
Right, yeah.
These are, there was so much original, inventive, clever, funny and scary concepts in the book that I just, for somebody like me, it was just like right up my alley.
Yeah.
I was so excited when I found it.
Did it ever feel like it was going to be too big? Because obviously you're not working with an Avengers size budget.
Yeah. Well, no, absolutely. The problem with me is that I tend to be a naturally optimistic person. And on the surface, the book and the script, the way I fashioned the script from the book, it was, it had a lot of simple elements to it. Because some of the best and the funniest scenes are just the two guys talking to one another, and maybe with a prop like a bratwurst cell phone or something. Not too demanding. But then there are a couple other sequences, a number of other sequences that required some effects. And I immediately started consulting director friends when I started, who had a little more experience in terms of compositing and visual effects. A director friend of mine named Carrie Pryor, who did this cool movie called The Revenant recently, another guy named Bill Malone, who, a lot of directors, Bill has directed some mainstream Hollywood movies like Fear.com and House on Haunted Hill remake, but he's also done some independents where he's done the visual effects 100% himself.
Wow.
So he was just like a great resource in terms of walking me around what we could do in terms of using After Effects and Nuke and some of those other programs. But yeah, so I did some research, but it was overwhelming, certainly, because we were not only just doing the digital side of things, but we also had a major rubber prosthetics effect component.
Right, which I was going to ask you about, because obviously you didn't have to. I would think the rubber prosthetics might cost more than some, like you said yourself, After Effects. You can do some stuff nowadays on a PC. So why did you decide to stick with the old school prosthetic stuff?
Well, it's really a function of tools. The rubber prosthetics or the digital, they're all just tools, and you got to find the right one or the right combination of both that can fit the budget and can also do the effect. For instance, our centerpiece prosthetic effect sequence is what we call the Meat Monster. And so there I was able to bring in an old friend, Robert Kurtzman, who was who's the K of KNB Effects,
right?
Which is the great makeup effects house. And he, once we thought about it, and this was also a creative decision. I decided to try to make that creature real, because I think that just a digital construct, the actors would have nothing to work off of, and there was a lot of interaction with the sausage lasso catching the guy, and so
it becomes the Star Wars prequels syndrome, right, where you're in a room of blue screen and
right,
you're not,
just nothing for them, nothing tangible. So we made a decision to go that way. But then that's not to say that one of the coolest little moments in that is when the Meat Monster comes together and he finally stands up. We went in and digitally just put a couple of trout sliding up his back and just kind of made it.
Right.
Added a certain, like they're going, wait a minute, they didn't do that with prosthetics. So, you got to, look, the audiences are very sophisticated now.
Yeah.
So you got to keep them guessing in
right,
some respects.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's a combination of tools, I guess, right?
That would be best.
My wife was just saying the other day about the Lord of the Rings, one of the earlier films from 10 years ago, how like the big battle scenes really took her out of it because there was so much going on. It started to not feel real. So obviously it's something you have to be conscious of. Like bigger isn't always better necessarily.
Well, and some things just defy possibility.
Right.
Because, those scenes are epic in The Lord of the Rings, but, it's the only way it could be done is as some kind of animated thing.
But funny enough, a meat monster seems more believable than a field of 20,000 guys.
Well, thank you. That's a compliment that I will accept very graciously.
And I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I'm not dissing on them, but
right. But the thing is keep in mind is that some hard work went into that because the way we got a lot of those meat assembly scenes was old school with just monofilament and rubber pieces of meat and puppeting them around the floors. We spent a couple of days just doing that, and the whole time I'm just thinking, this is never going to work. This is going to look ridiculous. But it's weird how if you shoot things in the right way, sometimes you reverse them, sometimes you have to remove a wire or whatever, and a lot of times that stuff can't work. Right. And of course, good sound effects can help too.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's basically an acid trip movie, for lack of a better term. They're on soy sauce, not acid, right? But I haven't read the book. I would imagine the book is in the same vein. It's also an acid trip book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're very faithful to the book. It's just that the book was 350 pages and our script was 100. So there was one big chunk that was like a Lord of the Rings unfilmable sequence that we just had to delete for those purposes. But no, it is, and there's no question that I'm getting a lot of commentary that some audience members are watching it baked and half-baked and, whatever anybody wants for that kind of thing. But
did you design it as a kind of a midnight movie, like the kind of film that could...
I think that that's something that's probably expected to begin with. But the funny thing is that, see, when I was growing up, the ultimate drug movie there was 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, sure.
So, I guess if someone was to say the best drug movie of the 2000s, we'd take it.
Right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I've read that back then people would just go to the theater and lay down in front of the screen for 2001, right?
Yeah.
But when I was in high school, it was heavy metal was a big one.
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah, animation.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff.
So you mentioned that about 100 pages were chopped out.
Yeah.
Is there, and I know it's hard to say now, but have you guys thought at least about a sequel or a series? It's very episodic, and it feels like these guys can continue on.
Yeah, it looks just getting a response like that from you, bringing it up. Yeah, I think that it's definitely possible. There's lots of adventures that these guys could experience. There's some sections of the book that were untouched and are available to us, and the author, David Wong, has just finished a sequel which is selling really well, and it's called This Book is Spiders, Seriously Dude, Don't Touch It. And it's a little darker, and there's these good-sized spider creatures in it. There's some zombies in it, and with Dave and John at the center of it all.
Okay.
So, and you'll also notice when you see the film that towards the end, at the very end of the movie, we have a little mini sequel built in when they have one further adventure during the end credits. So yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities, but we just need to get every IGN follower to go see the movie twice and buy 2 DVDs. So
well,
we'll be there.
Who knows? Maybe it might happen. Can I ask you about Bubba Nosferatu?
Sure.
I know it's been this thing that's kind of like, I don't even know if on again, off against the right term.
Well, I'd say it's in abeyance right now. The thing is that it's funny how it came up because the concept originally was just a bit of a joke in the end credits of Bubba. And the idea was that the movie ended on a pretty melancholy note, and I had just always loved the James Bond movies and how they always ended with James Bond will return, and then there would be the title of the new movie, and then for the next 18 months or 2 years you'd be thinking about that.
Right.
And I thought, what the hell, let's put a sequel in there for Elvis. So we put it in, and I was at the first screening of the movie, and I was standing next to the screen with Bruce Campbell waiting for the credits to end because we were going to do a Q&A, and the credit rolls up with that Bubba Nosferatu, and this animal-like roar comes out of the crowd, and it was like, I looked at him and we thought, whoa, they really would accept a sequel.
Yeah.
And so that was when it started, and so I did some work. I had some different ideas and things I wanted to pursue on it. One of the things that I've always been fascinated by, and how I came to get to know Paul, was that the relationship between Elvis and his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. Right. This guy's an amazing character, this manager, and Elvis fans hate his guts because they blame him for Elvis's descent into drugs, for putting him into all the junkie movies,
right.
and then taking most of his fortune away from him.
Right.
So this was an attempt at, in the context of how he would control Elvis, that how we could tell this story of this relationship. So in any case, I wrote the screenplay, and then I got the good fortune of meeting Paul, and he had been a big Bubba Hotel fan, and I mentioned this idea to him, and he took to it. And at one time we had the funding set, and it just didn't work out. Bruce Campbell had decided he really didn't want to do it, and he had some other things going on, and so that was it. Sort of stopped there. But the one thing I do know is that Elvis is eternal.
Yeah.
And especially when you're telling stories about an aged Elvis, there's still a big window that's still open there for us, maybe another couple decades. So you never say never, but I would like to go back in that world if I could.
Sure. I have to ask you about the Beastmaster while we're here. You must have been pretty young when you made that movie.
I was 27 when I made that movie.
Was that a positive experience for you, or did you get beaten up by the studio, or what?
Well, it wasn't so much the studios. It was just the financiers. I had a very tough relationship with them in terms of the creative interference. And so consequently, it was my first experience where one of my movies was made that I didn't really have control in terms of editing and a lot of choices that were made. So if directors call a lot of their films their children, this would be my bastard stepchild, okay? Because there are some wonderful things in the Beastmaster that I just love to watch this day, and other things that cause me to groan. But fans have just embraced it through the years, and who am I to criticize anything? I'm happy that people like it and still do.
Is there a director's cut, or is it?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the material that was excluded was lost and gone. Certainly, there is no director's cut. If I was to make a director's cut, it would be a lot shorter, because it was it came in at about 120 minutes. I think the movie could have easily run it 10 or 15 minutes shorter.
Sure, yeah. What's the stuff that you don't like in it?
Well, I never had seen the Rip Torn character having quite so much screaming dialogue from the pyramid. And I think a lot of it had to do with how the sequences are edited and some of the special effects. Like I said, my wife always tells me there are so many fans out there. Don't criticize it.
Okay.
For the early '80s and for the younger audiences, it was the perfect movie, and that's why Billy Crystal coined that joke on the Tonight Show that what did HBO stand for? It was, "Hey, Beastmaster's on," because they just played it over.
Yeah, I think it made me the man I am today. I think watching Beastmaster. All right, so I guess my last question for you then is just what do you think will be next for you?
Hey, it's a good question. I don't have any clear-cut answer yet. Certainly would love to direct more movies, but it's a difficult time raising funding, and I've made a lot of independent movies, and independent movie making from a financial point of view is super difficult nowadays. But that being said, I got a number of different scripts and projects that I'm developing. I'd love to work with Paul Giamatti's company again, because they're great guys. But I think, hopefully John does at the end and will be successful, and be able to write my own ticket.
You also seem to be willing to, if you look at your resume, it's like you're willing to take time between projects. You don't just jump at anything, it seems.
Yeah, that's how it looks looking back, but I don't know if working forward that's always holds true. But yeah, I think, part of it was, I have a lot of different interests outside the genre, and so frequently after film I'll write a script, and it'll be non-horror and non-sci-fi, and not be able to get it So,
are you pigeonholed?
oh, absolutely. I mean, look, it's a blessing and it's a curse. I mean, you know, how cool is it to be able to make your living in the genre, making horror movies? It's great.
Yeah.
But the downside is, and I have a lot of friends and comrades in the business that suffer from the same situation. It's a slippery slope, you know, the John Carpenters and the Joe Dantes and those kind of guys, brilliantly talented directors. But once you make a successful horror film, it's like, you're a horror director.
Yeah, that's Hollywood.
Yeah, I know. But hey, I'm not complaining.
Sure.